Hello everyone, welcome back to class. Today we're going to go on a field trip to Biosphere 2. I know I'm an English teacher and not a scientist, so taking a science-based field trip is a little weird. But I want to show you how real-life applications can be used with English skills and the creativity I always push so hard for my students. So let's get started. While we're getting geared up for the virtual field trip, let's go over what we're going to learn today. Where does creativity come from? How do I prevent myself from failing? Can I take someone else's ideas? What will a year in Mr. Lee's English class look like? So I've never been to Biosphere, yet I was tasked with creating a concept called a virtual field trip using digital multimedia. This all came about because I took a college class this summer, and it was all about media literacy and how to spark creativity through online multimedia. Both literacy and creativity go hand in hand with English, although the class was primarily given to science and math-based teachers. I think I was the only English teacher in the class. The class was very well put together by a professor named Jill Castick of the University of Arizona, and she was assisted with her graduate class assistants. So I drive to the Biosphere, where it was a little over a half an hour north of Tucson. While coming up to the building, I was mesmerized by the architecture. I've looked at pictures online before, but as always, pictures come nowhere close to the real life thing. I met my classmates in the common picnic area where we met our tour guide and he gave us the lay of the land. Everyone seemed to have some serious scientific and mathematical questions about the place, but I had one mission in mind. Did Pauly Shore really sneak into the first mission of Biosphere? The class wound its way through the many structures in the area, coming across all these dangerous wildlife, as our fearless guide led our merry band out of harm's way. Our guide pointed out one of the experiments in progress currently being done on the premises. It dealt with solar panels. The proprietors of this experiment realized there were a few problems with the solar power and they sought to solve them. So the first problem arises with the fundamental purpose of solar technology, which is that solar technology is meant to create a clean source of technology that can have the power to prevent climate change. But if you have a plot of land and you designated it to solar power, you quickly realize that solar panels start to create a sort of bubble or dome around them, adding to the warming, and that's kind of counterproductive to climate change and the equation to it. The secondary problem they came up with is that once you start adding heat to a solar cell, it decreases the efficiency of the power collection. So they wanted to test a possible solution to this problem. Plants absorb energy from the sun, so what if they raise the height of the solar collection field and plant a garden underneath it? Well, it turns out that they have been able to mitigate the temperature of that heat bubble I was talking about, and in turn increase the efficiency of the solar panels. So this is a real life creative problem solving experiment. So creativity can be found all around us. It doesn't have to be the stereotypical form of like a painting or other forms of art. In my mind, this means that there are countless examples of creativity all around us. You wouldn't believe me if I told you how many of my students told me that they were not creative and gave up the project before it even started. So this kind of makes me curious about what you think the definition of creativity is. So let's use this to make a discussion to help my future students. I want you to comment down below, and I want you to share your definition of creativity. In fact, give some examples about it as well. I think if we get enough people to share their thoughts, it could show other people that they are creative but in different ways and most likely don't even know it. This could give them the courage that they need. And courage is a big part of the equation of success. And that we'll kind of touch on in a moment. So from there, we went on a behind the scenes tour of what they called the lungs of Biosphere. This was a great place for the mathematicians to demonstrate that when air heats up, it expands. And if you want to make sure that a biosphere is really airtight, you need a way for the air to expand and contract depending on how hot it is outside. So an amazing demonstration was the force of air would move up and down this huge metal plate attached to a gigantic rubber tube. Then we went even deeper into the biosphere, and we were further demonstrated the mass scale of the biosphere experiment. They controlled everything from the temperature to the humidity to the actual rain as they recreate a rainforest in the desert of Arizona. At this point, it's easy to understand why the building has an estimated value of about $1 billion. But even this billion-dollar experiment is just a type of scaled down version of an actual rainforest. In fact, the next place we went was an experiment they called LEO, L-E-O, that collects rain runoff and measures the effect on the soil. So the experiment ran above our heads in this massive steel structure. Hundreds of sensors ran through it and it measured everything that the scientists could come up with. But right next to it was kind of a mini LEO, something that was a fraction of the size but the exact same thing. So talking to the guide about why there was a scaled down model, we discussed the importance of creating smaller scale models. When learning, you need to mitigate cost. Money doesn't grow on trees. This wouldn't be needed if everyone was correct all the time. Isn't that what school is for, so we can be right all the time? Actually, the fact is that it's the exact opposite. We go to school to get things wrong. We fail, but we figure out why we failed. So then we can try again. This scaled down LEO model allowed us to do that. Fail. And once we figure out why we failed, then we can cause some change in the actual world. So parents seem to have this idea in their mind that they don't want their children to experience the pain of failure. So they protect them from it. When inevitably they're faced with this failure that comes with life, they get discouraged and they often give up. But here's one main difference between successful people and unsuccessful people in this world. Successful people actually consider failure and criticism as a gift, and they look forward to it, and they grow from it. Now, just like when a baby learns to walk, failure can be difficult to accept. But eventually a baby learns how to control their muscles and their strength, and then they accomplish the first steps of their life. That's exactly how you need to approach failure. With this determination and grit a baby actually demonstrates when he learns to walk. If you think about it, the only true failure is when you give up. Everything else is just considered growth. Now, how does this all translate to English? Well, there is a big push in the world for what is called STEM classes. That is science, technology, engineering, math. These are all considered the most important disciplines to learn for the growth of our world and for our financial well-being. All of these are very much data-driven. English doesn't seem to have much data in it. There's a push towards a concept called big data. And that takes a massive amount of energy, and it tries to figure out some kind of trend to predict something. So, one of the most common examples of big data is Facebook and how it collects all the data from you and it sells it to companies. It sells it to companies so they can use it to try to get you to buy something. This strategy has made Facebook one of the most profitable companies in the entire world. And if that doesn't give you an idea of how important big data has become, I don't know what will. Now, let's say you are one of these STEM experts that collects all this data. Now that you have this data, what do you do with it? You have to present it to people in order to get them to understand or buy into whatever you're trying to figure out. And presenting that data is one of the last and arguably one of the most important steps of the data process. So you have to be able to tell a story with that data. And in order to have a chance to even be creative with it in the first place. So this concept is called a data story. A good data story has three parts. It has data, narrative, and visuals. So data collection is only part of the data story. Narrative and visuals are a creative aspect that English language arts prepares you for. So this is what you're going to be expecting from my class. You're going to find problems, and then you're going to think of a possible solution to these problems. You experiment, collect the data, and then you're going to put it in a data story and use narratives and visuals to help you tell that story. So how are we going to find this problem, you ask? Well, we're going to go on a lot of field trips, and you're going to try and come up with possible solutions to the problems we find out in these field trips. But how do we get that data? The answer is that we're going to team up with your other teachers to come up with ways to create an experiment and collect all this data. And what are we going to do with all this data? We're going to use digital multimedia to create a narrative and visuals to present that data story. So, as always, time is a factor. So it's going to be important to create deadlines and due dates as part of the creative process. So yes, there will be strict dates for each project. Knowing this, it's important to know that part of the creative process is to build off of other people's ideas. In fact, there is a fine line between stealing someone's ideas and actually building something off of them. So I'm going to have us focus on how to do this appropriately and legally. In fact, it's important for me to set the example for you. Many of the concepts we're going to learn about in creativity come from this book, Create to Learn by Renee Hobbs. So I suggest you pick up a copy, and it's a great book to help you rethink the way you look at learning. It got me to change the way I teach, to use creation of projects and a concept called project-based learning. And I hope we create a bunch of these projects this year. So now, before the field trip is through, let's recap on what we learned today. Where does creativity come from? Well, creativity is all around us and is not limited to the standard definition of being an artist. Take a look down at the comments below and see what everybody said. How do I prevent myself from failing? Failure is actually a part of success. You will fail, but instead of failing or fearing that failure, embrace it and think of it as a gift. What you really need to prevent is the act of quitting. Work on your determination and perseverance. Can you take somebody else's ideas? Of course you can. It helps time, and there is no point on reinventing what has already been done. But there's a line between stealing and building on others' ideas, which we will work on defining in this class. What will a year in Mr. Lee's English class look like? Projects. In other words, we're going to create projects, and we will learn through the process of creating these projects. We will create a data story using the three pillars of creation: data, narrative, and visuals. Your other classes will help you collect the data you need to be successful in my class after we go on those discovery field trips I talked about. These field trips are to help you find problems that need solving. So at the end of my Biosphere field trip, I did get a chance to ask my biggest question. Was it where Pauly Shore lived?
Biodome did not happen here.
Oh, man.
I've never seen that movie, but I hear it's horrible.
So I hope you get excited for this year. I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys come up with and what concepts you get excited about. I'm going to guess that you will probably get tired of me talking about success and what it takes for you to succeed in anything you choose in your life. But as your teacher, that's my job. It's what I'm here for. But once again, thanks for letting me teach you. I'll see you next time.